So, first of all, thank you for joining me during this pandemic. How are you yourself? How are you keeping well?
I would rate myself as a 10 at the moment, out of 10. I feel really good, really strong physically and mentally at the moment.
Brilliant. So, ha- during this, you're a very fit and active person without this going on anyway. How are you keeping fit during lockdown? It must be quite challenging.
Um, I genuinely haven't found it that challenging. I think maybe because of my background with sport, and I always train quite hard anyway. Because we're able to get outside, which is useful, and I've got a garden, which is really useful. I've found it quite accessible to get and do things. So I've found it quite easy to adapt, if I'm honest.
I've seen through your Instagram stories, which you're quite active on, and I must say the quality is brilliant and it's very positive from someone who lives in the city centre. Seeing someone out and about kind of makes me want to go out and about as well, which I find great. Um, how is your Jeff Runs the Decade challenge going? And have you completed any other challenges since being in lockdown?
Well, I think what you've just said kind of proves that what I set out to do is working, which is really, as you were speaking, I was inside, I was smiling or grinning actually, because that's kind of what I want to do. I want to try and inspire people to get outdoors, and you don't have to be a marathon runner, you don't have to be an ultra runner, you can run a mile a day, but I think, especially in the lockdown period, I think just by the actual action of lacing up a pair of trainers and going out, and it can be walking, it doesn't have to be running if you can't run, but actually getting outside the front door and doing that consistently, I think is really useful. And that was the purpose of starting Jeff Runs a Decade. It was a very flimsy, unthought out idea that I literally came up with on sort of like New Year's Eve. I was like, I should do something. I was just thinking about the fact that we were slipping into a new decade, and I was thinking, I really should do something. I'm not going to get, at the age of 56, I'm not going to get many fresh decades, probably, to actually do anything like this. So I just had this idea of trying to run every single day for 10 years, and that would take me to being 66, and just seeing what adventures that takes me on. So it could be anything really. And I think that once we build a bit of a tribe, hopefully we encourage people to join in and do their own running, whatever that looks like, and then we just see how it evolves, and hopefully it's an organic thing, and sort of from zero and just an idea. I think we've got about 1,700 people following at the moment, and at the weekend we were sort of getting through, I think we had 414 people liking one of our posts, and you sort of go, that's for a reason. That's because it's resonating, I think, and it's connecting with people. So it's very difficult, I have to say, during the lockdown period to actually be creative with your Instagram stories or your Instagram posts. But going back to the second part of your question, where you asked about if I'd sort of created anything or done anything specifically from an event perspective, I decided that the content was becoming pretty boring, just ugly pictures of me sort of smiling and doing half-assed things. And I can't really do much more, to be perfectly honest. So I thought, why don't we do a challenge? So with the help of my daughter, Chloe, who runs Big Moose Coffee Co., she said, well, why don't we, and she found this challenge, which I have to say was probably a little bit outside of my comfort zone when I first looked at it. And then I did a bit of research. I started to get hooked in and started to get excited by it, scared by it. And eventually what we did was we decided to do it last weekend. So the challenge itself was to run. It's designed by a guy called David Goggins, who, I'm going to be honest, I'm not a fan of. Putting it out there, there'll be a lot of people that will be hating on me, but I'm not a fan of his. He's a little bit, a bit too in your face for me, my personal tastes. But the challenge was awesome. The challenge is to run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So a big part of the challenge, which I can now, having completed it, definitely say, is that it's torture.
At
So
least you're honest. I can't deny that.
that's all it is. It's torture. So every time. So if you think about it, I started running Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. and I had to run every 4 hours for the next 48 hours. So first and foremost, that means that in 2 days' time, you'll have completed nearly 2 marathons. And I hadn't trained as much as I should have trained. That's a fact. And also, I think that I wasn't fully prepared for how torturous it was going to be. And the torture part comes with lack of sleep and lack of rest and lack of being able to digest food. So if you think about it, you've got a 4-hour period before you do the next run. So you have to start at 4 p.m., run however long that takes you, between 30 and 60 minutes, depending on how fast you are. And then you've got to eat. If you decide you want to be clean and shower, have a shower or a bath or an ice bath or whatever. And then you've got roughly, I was having between 2 and 2.5 hours of rest, which means, especially during the night. So come midnight, you're running at midnight, you come home, you're in bed by 1:30, and then you've got 2.5 hours before you've got to, but it's not just running, you've got to get up. I had to tape my feet because I was starting to get blisters. You've got to get yourself mentally prepared as well. So it's torture, which is, I completely get that why he does it, because he's an ex-Navy SEAL. And I think that torturous thing of getting up and having to do the same 4 miles. The 4 miles wasn't terrible. It was difficult, because by the time you get to mile 45, that's quite a lot to do in 2 days with not very much sleep. But it was the torture of eating, drinking, hydrating correctly, and then managing to get back on the horse and run 4 miles. So it was a difficult challenge, but good fun though.
I was going to say, it seems or looked to be very mentally and physically challenging. What kept you going throughout it, or what made you want to complete the challenge?
Pig-headedness, being honest.
Fair enough.
I don't like failing. I'm not a fan of failing, and because I put myself out there and we decided to put it on social media and put it on Jeff Runs a Decade, I had a choice. I either worked through it and had a modicum of success, or I failed, and it was one of those ones where, you've not completed the task or the challenge that you set yourself out to do. So I never had, being honest, I never had any doubts that I could do it. It was just whether my body could do it. Mentally, I'm quite tuned in mentally. You mentioned that you had Richard Parks on recently, and Richard's a friend of mine, and I think we've probably got a similar kind of mindset insofar as it's real positive mental attitude when the going gets tough. And I know that Richard has climbed a lot of mountains and done some amazing feats physically, and that brings with it mental fortitude, which I know he has in bucket loads. And I might not have as much as him, but I've got some, and I'm quite sort of fastidious in what I do and dogged with what I do. So I didn't want to fail. So there wasn't a time throughout the 48 hours where I thought, I'm not going to be able to do this, which is good for me physically and mentally, because it proves that I've still got more in the tank. So when I choose my next challenge, I'll have this one to look back on, as well as other things that I've done in the past to sort of use as my reference point, so to speak.
With every 4 miles that you did, so you did 12 runs, if I'm correct, you wore a different charity or business top every single time. Why did you do that, and how does it make you feel wearing those colours, those logos?
I'd watched a number of videos on YouTube with people doing the 48-hour challenge, and it was quite vanilla. And I thought, what I could do is, just to make it interesting from a spectator's point of view, is to have some kind of a reference and sort of reference. So I got some charities that I'm close to. I've got some friends that have got businesses that are running businesses. So there was a certain alignment. So the people that I was referencing were Agile Therapy, who do physiotherapy and are great friends of mine and have helped me out in the past. I've got 3 friends that have got running businesses. So they've got event businesses that do running and triathlon stuff. So, and then some charities such as Velindra, who are an amazing cancer charity, etc. So it was very much about trying to sort of give some publicity, however big or small that is. But if one person goes to the Velindra website and donates a tenner, that's kind of cool. If anybody books a trip with one of my friends who've got a running company, that again is good to look at. But just to try and make it a little bit interesting and bring my friendship group along, I suppose.
That That's brilliant, and it must be good for them to see you running in their colours as well. I saw that you group of friends or someone you know drove past while you were running. How did that make you
Yeah,
feel?
yeah, that was awesome. Because we sort of had a reference point as to what time of day I was going out once every 4 hours. One of the groups of friends had seen, who lives locally to us, had seen what I was doing, contacted my daughter Chloe, and between them they hatched this plan. So when I set out on this route, I was sort of jogging along as I do, and I heard this sort of cheering from behind. They got a convertible car, and there's like the whole family. I think they're like five girls and one dad, and they're all cheering, and just I didn't expect it. And I have to say, those kinds of things are brilliant, because for the challenge, I had a few things like that. I had different people had done similar things, so they came past and cheered and took pictures and videos, and it just lifts your spirits, because you're kind of like jogging away. I'm on mile 30 or whatever the mile was, and then suddenly you've got, because what that means is that those people have actually had to get up and put the effort into getting into their car, come and follow you, go past, cheer, and that it's about them making an effort to support you, which is brilliant. I had another friend who cycled past me one morning, so I was coming along, and there was this cyclist, but he had a mask on and a cycle helmet, and I didn't recognise him. I thought, who is this? And this cyclist that was coming towards me just slowed down, and the mask he had on was quite sort of scary, and I was like, what's going on here? I'm going to get mugged by a cyclist. And I kind of looked over, and this face that I still couldn't see just voiced to me and went, you're going to smash it. And I'm like, I didn't recognize the voice or anything. I said, who is that? And he goes, it's Chris. I'm like, and it was a friend of mine who was obviously sort of like, again, on that trajectory that he was going to come, which was amazing.
That's
so that
fantastic.
was Then another friend, third and final one, was another friend of mine a guy called Reese Jenkins, who's got a running club called Pegasus, and they're a business. And what they do is they have ultra marathon runs that they do. And he knew that I was going to be finishing, so he came along in his car with his wife, and they cheered me on as I was coming in. But then what they'd done is they'd left a medal on my doorstep, which had got a shoelace from a race that he'd done a year or so ago, which was amazing. So, yeah,
that's really fantastic.
Yeah, it was really cool.
So how is recovery going for you? It seemed to be a very tough challenge on every aspect of the body. How is recovery going?
Amazing. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning about that, and Monday I was absolutely fine. I've recovered probably better than I've ever recovered for any challenge before. I'm not a big one for beating the drum about being plant-based, but on this challenge 6 months ago, I decided to go plant-based, and this has been my first challenge of doing anything without sort of any meat or anything dairy, and the recovery's just been phenomenal. So yeah, I'm a bit of a fan, and it's proved to be really good for me. I was just surprised, like literally Monday morning, I woke up and I was like, back on it, and I went out and ran because I've got to for the decade. But it was just one of those ones where I'm putting it down to the plant-based diet, but I don't know, just I should be getting weaker because I'm getting older, but I seem to be okay, which is, I'm going to stick with it.
I don't blame you. With the Jeff Runs the Decade thing, obviously you went straight back at it after your challenge. Have you encountered any pitfalls, injuries, or anything since you started your Jeff Runs the Decade challenge?
Yes, so I probably had a few challenges actually. I started, as I mentioned, the challenge without too much forethought and without too much planning, which is a bit foolhardy if I'm really honest. And what I'd forgotten about was that on the 2nd of January, I was going skiing with 3 of my best friends who tend to drink quite a bit. I'm not a massive drinker, but I was on this ski holiday. So I was like, 2 days on the trot, I went skiing and I was like, I'll run when I come back. But we ended up having a little bit of après ski and getting back to the hotel and going, I was a bit boozed and a bit sort of like, oh my God, I've got to go and run. But I still did, and I videoed it, and the videos are on the social media. So that was okay until the third day of the skiing. I actually had a mini accident. I just fell over really stupidly. I wasn't going fast. I was just coming into a stop, and I literally fell over like an idiot. But I twisted my ankle and broke a rib
Ooh,
somehow. Got no idea how. So I had to sort of like go, well, the ankle has been a bit of a problem since then. And it's one of those ones where you go, I shouldn't really be running on it. And at the weekend, I was like, I'm not sure whether that's going to actually affect it. But fortunately, it was okay. And we managed to grind 48 miles out, which I think the
that's
body
impressive.
can do some amazing things, can't it?
Definitely. And I think you've proven it to quite a lot of people out there that you can push your body and it will get there somehow.
Yeah, yeah. I think if you align your mind with your body, and your mind is strong enough, and your mind tells your body you can do it, yeah, the human body is capable of doing amazing stuff.
Speaking about the mind, as you're probably aware, it's Mental Health Awareness Week this week.
Yep.
And if we're in a situation now where I think everyone's mental health has been put to the test, how are you coping with your mental health in general, and what advice would you give to people who are struggling at the moment and kind of need that positive motivation to keep on going?
On a personal level, I've been okay. I've kind of assessed quite early on in the pandemic how it was going to affect my business and how it was going to affect me commercially, and I've gone through that process. And initially, it was quite painful, but I've kind of worked out a plan, and things on a personal level are okay, which I'm sure there'll be lots of people that will be struggling, and hence your question about the mental health side of things. We've got the charity Big Moose Coffee Co., which you're aware of, where we've got a number of staff. I think we've got about 20 people. And I personally was very conscious of the fragility of those staff members and how mental health could potentially have been a real issue and a problem with them. Fortunately, touching wood, all of our staff are in a really good place. I think the furloughing and the fact that they're financially stable, and what we've managed to do is, whilst the government is paying 80% in furlough, we're actually topping up the extra 20 to give them 100%. So financially, they're stable until such time as we can reopen, which I think is a massive benefit and a massive bonus. But also what we've been doing is regularly checking in. So we've been checking in with every single one of them, almost like spinning plates. So when one starts to wobble, we're in a position where we can go, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And to try and help them. So, and I've been personally trying to do that with friends and family as well, and just literally checking in quite regularly and seeing how people are doing. One of my friends who's a really strong-willed guy and quite sort of alpha male, I found was really struggling. So we've hooked him up with a counsellor that we work with through Big Moose, and he's doing some work with him, which hopefully will just sort of give him some tools which allow him to work out how to cope with the stresses of his business and things that, whilst on the surface seem terrible, I'm also working with other businesses who are really looking into the positive side of things. I think it's how you measure it and how you view things. Like it's quite easy if you are in a downward spiral to just sort of sink a little bit. But if you've got people around you that can help lift you and go, well, there are opportunities, there will be opportunities, and hopefully recognize what areas and what directions you can perhaps go in a new world that will actually be fresh green shoots. And that's the way I've been trying to approach it, really. And it seems to have been working okay.
So is there anything like specifically, so a change of diet, going out and about just to get some fresh air, that anything that you could suggest to someone who is struggling with anxiety, depression, anything during this situation, like that, any experience that you've learned from, anything you could suggest to them to help them through this difficult time, really?
I think you're right in your suggestion of diet. Diet's a great one. I mean, it's very easy to sort of just drop a gear, slip into eating perhaps what we know is inappropriately, potentially drinking too much, etc. So I think the reverse of that, and having a good diet, and it doesn't need to be a plant-based diet, but a healthier diet. So perhaps, and some of the people that we've got within our team have started cooking. So we've been encouraging them to cook and cook vegetables and cook some good sort of healthy stuff. So I think learning to cook is now's a great time to be able to do that. There are so many places you can go online for free cookery lessons, etc. So learning to cook, I think, is a really good thing. Being able to, because once you learn to cook, I think the success of cooking a good meal is quite rewarding for people that have not learned to cook in the past. So now's a good time to try things. So diet, yes, completely agree. I'm a huge fan of exercise. I don't think you have to go running 48 miles in 48 hours, but I do think if you can go outside and go in your garden, if you have one, do some yoga. There are so many online places to go now, and lots of people that are giving stuff away, so you don't have to pay for things, which is great. You've got your Joe Wicks doing some amazing work from what I've been told. Do you watch Joe Wicks at all?
I haven't, but me or my household, I'm in a student house at the moment, so me and my two other housemates will be doing a morning workout every day, and we alternate who's leading it, which I've found great, and it's a good morning motivational boost to get some work done and be productive. So I completely agree with exercise and going outdoors, even just going for a walk.
I've seen a number of friends and co-workers who have really used this spare time and this free time to get exercise into their regimen, and are really doing well with it, are dropping weight, are seeing body image improving, etc. And I think that's a really healthy thing. And if you run, some of the people that have been running on the Jeff Runs the Decade thing have been posting that they've done certain distances that they've never done before, and they feel great, and they're getting PBs and real lots of energy, like lots and lots of energy, which I think is really healthy and is encouraging me to continue doing stuff. So I'm now going, right, what's the next thing for me to look at from a challenge perspective to try and sort of, I was very nervous I didn't want it to be the Jeff show insofar as look at me, but what I've kind of discovered is that by doing stuff, it's encouraging people to sort of push themselves outside their comfort zones. So I don't mind doing that if it needs me to do that. And it seems to be working. So I'm now starting to look at fresh challenges, so I can perhaps introduce one every month or every couple of months, you know?
That was my next question. So do you have any new challenges coming up? Is there anything that's you've seen and you're like, oh, I really want to try that or try and do it?
Well, first and foremost, along the journey to do this 4448 challenge last weekend, a few of my friends who are athletes anyway have said, oh, I really want to do that. I like the sound of it. So I've got now 3 of my friends who are going to do exactly the same challenge. So on a personal note, I'm kind of excited because I'm starting to put together some notes and a bit of a brief on how I did it, what I did right, what I did wrong, because I made quite a few mistakes. So try and let them learn from my mistakes and do it better so that they can hopefully be successful as well. So that's going to consume a few days of my time just getting that put together. And I had a great call this morning with a friend of mine who's also going to do it. And he's just coming out, he's ending his career as a professional rugby player.
Oh, wow.
He's now looking for a direction and talking about doing this challenge as a little bit of a start. But we had a great call about how he can develop himself and use this challenge as a little bit of a springboard to take him on to doing something even bigger and better. So again, it's helping other people for me is really making me happy, because I like building people. If I can build people and see people grow, that's very satisfying for me personally. Going back to your question about any challenges for myself, haven't had a chance to look at anything, but I'm sure my daughter will stitch me up and find something that will be equally as painful and torturous. So watch this space, I suppose.
I'm sure she'll find something to put you to the test. Yeah. So just to end our discussion, obviously you run Big Moose Coffee Co with Chloe, who's your daughter. Yeah. This situation must have been quite of a shock to you, trying to organize your business around a pandemic when everything is shut. How are you as a business coping, and how are you planning on going about reopening when the government says it's okay to?
Well, the girls, Chloe and my wife, are in the shop now. I'm not working. They are. I'm working on my work, but they're working in the shop now, and they're doing some great stuff. So they've done some painting. They've been cleaning. They've been sort of changing over bits and pieces, just getting the place really fresh, so that when we do get the opportunity to open the doors again, we can come in with a big crash bang wallop and sort of be ready for it. So I think that's kept them mentally tuned into the business, but the actual business and the staff have kind of, I suppose in a way, we've mothballed everything really and just put it to, we were talking about it yesterday and making sure that we're planning for the future. And we've got a lot of plans. What we want to try, it's all going to have to be fluid and agile because things are changing, as we know, by the hour. So it's one of those ones where nobody has the experience of this kind of thing that they can use to say, this is how it's happened before, this is what we're going to do. None of us know. You can assume, you can plan, you can project, but you can't know. So what we've tried to do is let's keep everything flexible and fluid, as I mentioned, but let's have a plan. So we've got a game plan for as soon as we think we're going to be able to open the doors, but it does depend on what the lockdown or coming out of lockdown rules look like, because I don't think it will just be on and off. I don't think that's the way it's going to pan out. So we're going to have to be very careful to see whether also it's the right time for us to open, because there's no point in opening with a full complement of staff and ordering lots of food in and then finding out that there's nobody coming. We're based in town, city centre. And if city centre is still quite quiet, then there won't be people coming and making trips into town for shopping, etc., that are going to come and use us as a coffee shop. So it's going to be very tricky, but I think if you can navigate your way through this time, it will just make us stronger. So I don't have any fear. I just think that we need to stay strong, stay connected, make sure that our staff are ready and hungry to get back at it. I think that's the thing. It's very refreshing. Our staff all seem very keen and eager to get back to work, which is brilliant.
I think that's the situation for everyone. Me as a student, having university cut short, having my other job kind of cut short as well because all sports stopped. So it's kind of been a shock to me, and I just want to get back to it. So the last thing I'm going to ask is, do you have any advice, comments, or motivational words for people who are looking, just trying to stay positive through this? Any last words that you want to say to people to keep going?
I did a Zoom conference call with a friend of mine and some of her team, and she asked me if I could do something along the lines of the question you just asked me, and I designed something around designing your comeback. So what I tried to suggest to all of the girls that were on the conference call was to, rather than wait and react, is actually try and design your comeback. So depending upon whether you're a student or you're in a job role or whatever, whether you're a parent, whatever it looks like, your life looks like, start thinking about how you can design it and what you think it will actually look like once we come out of pandemic, and then how you can actually make yourself a better person. Because I think if you look around, there are I've found lots of tools I've managed to take from here and there to use to help me and also to help others, whether it's your exercise or whether it's looking at future operations. Some of my clients, my day job clients, one of them, Nathaniel Cars, who's a client of mine, based in Bridgend. I'm very close to the son, Nathan, and we've been liaising quite regularly, and they've really done a great job in designing their online offer. So if you wanted to buy a car, you could go through the whole process online, have it delivered. If you want a test drive, they'll deliver it, clean it internally, and you can then have it for a day or so to test drive. And last week was the first week that they've done it. They've been very proactive with their advertising. So on the radio, they've been advertising when lots of people aren't. And last week they sold 40 cars.
Oh, wow. Fair play.
I know. Well, I was like, how many do you sell when you're out of lockdown? And averaging, they sell 50, but they sold 40 while we're in a strict lockdown. So, which I think is amazing. But I think it's a mental attitude. If you have a positive attitude and you see the glass as being half full, and it's an opportunity on an opportunistic world that you're in, then you can take advantage of that. So I think probably to summarize, it's just about staying positive, making sure you exercise and get some endorphins in you, and also reaching out, I suppose, as well. Because I think if you're in a really good place, you should reach out and help others. And if you're in a really bad place, you should reach out and ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help, I suppose.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been great to chat to you and hear about all your challenges, adventures, and everything that's keeping you going during lockdown. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much indeed for the opportunity. Thanks.